Hello and thanks for joining me in this video. This one is going to be quite a bit different than most that you see on this channel in that it has nothing to do with business. We're going to talk about some history here today. As you know from the thumbnail, I just went on a tour of Europe, specifically a military history tour. So from that standpoint, it's quite a bit different than everything else here. It's completely unscripted, right? I shot the entire thing on an iPhone 17 Pro, put it together in Canva, mostly for friends and family. It's going to be a little bit longer than normal, too. We usually have them 10 to 12 minutes. This one, I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to work out to be, but it's going to be lengthy. But I just want to cover some of the history aspects of what has gone on in Europe as it impacts Americans, particularly now that we're in the 250th anniversary of our country, which is a pretty big deal. Going to do voiceovers on the videos, going to have some of the video audio audible that comes through. So it should all be pretty well interesting to you. I hope so anyway. The tour company I used was Beaches of Normandy. They're based in France in the Normandy area, and I cannot recommend them enough. They were an excellent tour company, particularly our tour director, Martin, Marton. And I'm really going to booger up this last name, Martin. I apologize profusely, but Zigliaghi, I think, is the way you pronounce it, but I'll put it here on the screen for you to read. And then Chuba, our driver. We went on a motor coach through most of the transportation here, a very luxurious motor coach, I might add. And he was the driver, and that guy could put a 40-foot motor coach through the eye of a needle. I swear, he was that good of a driver. Both of them were Hungarian. Both of them were very good fellows. Martin particularly knew a lot of history of Europe, had traveled throughout Europe. I think they both traveled throughout Europe, and it was very interesting to be with them over this period of time. However, with that said, I started off with the wrong foot. I am too old and too mean to travel economy from Nashville, Tennessee to Paris, France, and to Europe and back from Europe. So I spent the money for business class. Booked it on Expedia, which probably was a mistake, but anyway, it was fine. Tried to go through Lufthansa primarily. They pawned me off on Air France, who then pawned me off on Air Canada. Apparently, Air France and Air Canada are, I believe, the same airline. So I went Air France or Air Canada from here to Montreal to Paris, and then we flew home from Munich, which will show you a map in just a second. Flew home from Munich via Lufthansa to Chicago, and then Chicago United Airlines to Nashville. The return flight was fine. Didn't have any problem at all with that, except for a little miscommunication on my check-in, but that was nothing big. The big deal was Air Canada from Nashville to Montreal to Paris. They screwed it up royally. They lost my bag, and I didn't discover that until I was sitting at the conveyor in Paris waiting for my bag. Now, understand this, that I had a pretty tight timetable. I had 24 hours. Within 24 hours, I had to get on a tour bus to leave. So that was non-negotiable. That bus was leaving whether my bag was ready or not. So coming off the conveyor, no bag, talked to the baggage claim people there. They're like halfway speak English, halfway don't speak English, filled out a claim, which was fine. Told me at that point that my bag would be arriving through Montreal. That it was still sitting in Montreal and it would be arriving at 7 a.m. the next morning. I was scheduled to go on a pre-tour side trip to Mont Saint Michel that I had paid $450 for. By 6 o'clock the next morning, they told me my bag wouldn't be there till 7. So I immediately had to reach out to the tour company and say, I'm sorry, I can't make it. Can I get a refund? Of course, the answer, they don't refund. So filed a claim with the airport, with the airline. So hopefully that'll come out, but we'll see. Bottom line is that they told me my bag would be there at 7 a.m. Well, about 2 o'clock that afternoon, I got a phone call from a young lady with Air Canada here in Nashville that said, your bag is still sitting here. Great. Awesome. Had no idea when it was going to arrive. She said, I'll do my best to get it to you, but I got to send it through Toronto, and hopefully it will arrive on the 10 a.m. flight from Toronto in Paris the next morning. Lovely. Excited about that. Couldn't really get any information beyond that, so I had to trust. Now, the thing about the Paris airport is, in the Nashville airport, or all the U.S. airports, actually, you have a ticket counter, right? So you have one for United, you have one for American, you have one for Southwest, and there's people there all the time. It does not work that way at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. You have empty counters, and about an hour and a half before the flight comes out, that crew from that airline comes and populates the monitors and everything. So in the meantime, there's nobody there. There's nobody in the airport. There's no information desk. Hardly anybody speaks English. I'm trying to find out, where do I go? How do I get back to the baggage claim area to get my bag the next morning? No answers. Nobody there to tell me. So I said, okay, what am I going to do? I talked to the hotel concierge, and he was very helpful at the Sheraton and Charles de Gaulle. Very helpful people. Got me on an Uber, got me over to a mall, bought a whole bunch of clothes, another suitcase, just in case. So the problem was that we were leaving the next day to go to Cannes, C-A-N, France, which is about 3 hours away. They were not going to deliver my bag to me. They were going to mail my bag to me. We were going to be in each hotel about 3 days. So this bag potentially could be chasing me across Europe. So I said, I've got to get some more clothes. Got on with the concierge. He helped me arrange that. Very helpful people, as I said. And we got into the bag of clothes, anxiously waiting, finally figured out how to get down to the baggage claim, got my bag. It was supposed to come off the conveyor at 10. You would think a business class that was already late would have a big red flag on it, put this bag out first. No, sir. It was the last bag that came off the conveyor at 11:15, and my bus was scheduled to leave at 11:30. That was the latest they could wait for me, was 11:30. So if they had missed that bus, I would have had to catch an Uber from Paris to Cannes. Lovely. Okay, so that was the way the tour started. So I had kind of a bad attitude from the get-go, which is fine, but we got through it. Confessionally, this was my first trip to Europe. I learned a lot of things. I learned a lot about international travel. I learned a lot about Europe, and I just want to share a few ahas with you before we get into the rest of the video, and we'll get to it real fast here. First thing I learned is that in America, we really don't have history. We have history, but we don't have history. I'm talking about first century, second century, third century, 10th century history like we saw in Europe. And it was really, really eye-opening and really amazing. Gas is expensive. In France, gas runs about $12.30 to $12.60 per gallon. That's why you see no American cars in France. They're all little bitty cars, usually German make, lots of Chinese made. BYD was a brand that I saw a lot of. Money is very different and things are very expensive. So this is $100 bill. All right. You're accustomed to seeing this. You know what it looks like. This is €100 bill. Okay. Notice the difference in size. This does not fit in an American wallet. Okay. Just for reference, this is a €10 bill. And then for further reference, this is a €5 bill. Everything below €5 is coinage. So you have a €2 coin and a €1 coinage, and then change from there, which is very interesting. Things in Europe are very expensive, relatively speaking. You say, well, it's only $5, but you figure the exchange rate is more like $5.75. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind when you're over there. I will say, though, the food is a lot better. It's fresher. It's not processed. I mean, I don't think I ate a single bite of processed food the entire time I was gone, and I was gone for 14 days. It was delicious food at every meal, and I can't say enough. I think the best food was probably Germany. That's just me, though. You might like the French food better. The cheeses, the breads, the meats, outstanding, all of it. Interesting side note, it does not get dark in that part of Europe until about 10 p.m. I guess it has to do with the latitude and the northern lights and all that stuff. I don't know, but it was really kind of weird because I'm a guy that goes to bed about 9:30, and it was daylight every time I went to bed over there. They are very much into sustainability. The water bottle caps, they don't come completely off. They have a little ring where they only come partially off. When you walk in your hotel room, you have to insert your key card into a slot on the wall to activate the electricity in the room. So while you're gone, your air conditioner's not running, your lights are not running, nothing is running. So sustainability is the key there. And it's kind of weird to walk out of your hotel room door to a completely dark hallway, but as soon as you move, the lights pop on. So lots of motion sensor lights everywhere. In fact, everywhere, motion sensor lights. Interesting side notes, probably neither here nor there for you, but I thought they were kind of interesting to know. I made some new friends, some great new friends. Of course, they're 31 of your best friends you've never met before, and you get to know people. You kind of acclimatize to certain personalities that you prefer and others that you kind of steer away from, which is normal for a group event like this. So I just want to give a shout out to all the good friends. All that said, let's get to the video. Hope you enjoy it. So we landed in Paris and traveled via motor coach over to the Cannes area and the Normandy area where the beaches are. From there, we went to Bastogne and Luxembourg and on down to Munich area. We visited in Dachau and as well as Austria and Eagle's Nest, which was really interesting. My favorite area, I think. Cannes was our base for 4 nights, 3 or 4 nights, I can't remember, but it's a very historical city, including Cannes Castle, which was built by William the Conqueror in 1086, which we'll have some video of. So our day trips from there included traveling left or west to St. Mary Glees, where the airborne troops were scattered all over the countryside. From there, we went to Utah Beach, where the U.S. landed 24,000 troops and suffered 589 casualties. Next up was Point de Hoc, where U.S. Army Rangers landed and scaled 200-foot high bluffs to take some guns and cover a road that was important. And then next was Omaha Beach, which was actually the bloodbath that we experienced. 3,686 casualties and 90% of the first wave casualties. We also visited the U.S. Normandy Cemetery there at Omaha Beach, which was very poignant. 5,900 U.S. troops still buried there. Of the 20,000 that were actually killed in the area, maybe 40,000, I can't really remember, but it was really a dramatic situation to experience. From there, we visited the battery at Longueuil-sur-Mer instead of the town of Bayeux to see the Bayeux Tapestry, which was unfortunately under renovation at the time and we couldn't see. Then we moved over to the town of Aramache, which was also known as Gold Beach, where the Allies established the Mulberry Harbor, which was the fake harbor that allowed the tremendous resupply efforts. We also covered Juno and Sword beaches. So Gold, Juno, Sword beaches. It's important to notice that between these 3 beaches, the British and Canadian troops suffered what the U.S. suffered at one beach at Omaha in total, even though they had tremendous strength to the invasion force. And lastly, our visit to the area included a visit to the Pegasus Bridge Memorial, which was really interesting, where British airborne troops had landed and covered a bridge to secure the exit from the beaches for the rest of the troops in that area. During our trip, we visited 2 American cemeteries, the one in Normandy that we mentioned, and also the one in Luxembourg, where we actually had a ceremony. It was very poignant. That is where General George Patton is buried. So probably 1,700 troops buried in that cemetery. So a total of about 7,000, 8,000 Americans still resting on foreign soil as a tribute to the efforts on D-Day. And after spending time in Belgium and a little bit of time in Luxembourg, we went on down to the Munich area, traveled to Eagle's Nest, Dachau. And I think Eagle's Nest was probably my favorite area simply because it was beautiful Bavarian Alps. Very interesting stuff. I actually tacked on a night or so in Munich to see Munich Old Town. It was fairly interesting too. We'll talk about that. It was an interesting trip. So stay tuned for the videos. We'll see what we can put together here. As again, this is free flow. This is unscripted. This is just the real deal. So enjoy. All right. We are in Cannes, in Normandy. Not to be confused with Cannes, which is in the south of France. This is in Normandy, the Atlantic Ocean, not the Mediterranean. And what you see right here behind me is Cannes Castle, which was absolutely bombed to smithereens following World War II. In fact, the entire town was, but it's been rebuilt in the proper style. We'll see if we can climb up there and get us a better picture. Here we are, shot from the highest point, Cannes Castle, looking down the main street towards St. Peter's. Again, the first picture I took was right down here. You can see a really good view of the rest of the city. including the old structures over there. Here we are. So obviously they didn't rebuild all of it. As you can see, this portion down here is about the shape it was following the war, following the Battle of Caen. We're now looking north. Yep, looking north. They've turned it into a really beautiful park. They restored a big part of it for the legacy. And of course you can see the modern town in that direction. And clearly this was not original. But now looking back to where I've come, this is the parapet that I was walking. Nice breeze up here, nice breeze. Beautiful day, 82 degrees. Or as they say in France, 29 degrees centigrade. I believe that's 82, feels about like 82. Beautiful day, beautiful day. As you can see what they've done with the rest of it here. And the original moat that encircled it. And keep in mind, this was built by William the Conqueror when he was taking it away from the Vikings. I don't know if you know this or not, but Normandy, the Normans were the northern beasts. That's what Normandy means. And the northern beasts were the Vikings that conquered this area. And William the Conqueror in I believe it was 1086, took it back from him. That's why he's a hero here, and that's why even in truck stops, you see statues of William the Conqueror. Pretty cool stuff. If you like history, if you don't, just tune out of this video now. You won't like any of it.
Je ne pleure ni père ni mère, ni aucun de mes parents. Mais je pleure un capitaine qui est parti dans les grands bains. Ah, que l'amour m'ait tourmenté il y a longtemps.
Just came from back up that way and I was not paying attention. Streetcar tracks right here, I just about got run over. Oh boy, from Tennessee, better be careful around here. This is the, I guess for lack of a better description, call it the main shopping district of Caen. You can see all the stores around here. It's really interesting. This is really cool. An alleyway right off the main drag in Caen. Classic French. Let's walk back over here and look at this side of this building. If you like crepes, this is the place to get it, I understand. Moving on to the Normandy beaches area, Angeville was and is a very small village located about probably 10 or 15 miles from the Normandy beaches. The center church, which you see there, was used as an aid station by American paratroopers. It was taken over by the Germans or captured by the Germans, and they continued to work together to help the injured soldiers. And in honor of the American paratroopers, which helped free Normandy from the German control, the parishioners then installed the windows that you see there, had them manufactured and installed in there. Really pretty architecture. The original part of this church was built in the 10th century. They can tell by the architecture and how it was built. Very old, but also added on to, as many of the churches there in the villages are. And when it was used as an aid station, they used the pews as stretchers. And those are blood stains that you see that remain from 80 some odd years ago. Blood stains that are still on the pews from the injured American soldiers that were treated in this church. Really interesting stuff. Just a quickie shot here of the French countryside as we drove along, headed towards St. Mary-Église, which is where the 101st Airborne and the 82nd Airborne landed and fought. Good stuff. As the paratroopers were landing, of course, they jumped in the middle of the night. One of them landed on the church. You could see a mannequin of him hanging up there. U.S. Army Private John Steele, the 82nd Airborne, landed there and essentially stayed there during the entire Battle of St. Mary-Église. Moving inside the church now, you can see the beautiful Gothic architecture. The original portion of this church in St. Mary-Église was built in 1226, I believe, and it was a farmer's church. Everywhere in Normandy, there's lots of agriculture. So you see the Gothic emblems of pigs and sheep and goats and that sort of thing that are carved into the stone of the architecture of these churches. Got some close-ups of that, but I didn't really include it in this video for the sake of brevity. Really a pretty church. Final shot of the outside of the church, which is 800 years old. But what you see there to the left, that column is actually a Roman mile marker, which is 800 years older than the church. Amazing history here. And they use some bullet impact points in a fence bordering the square in front of a house there that have remained for 80 some odd years now. Testimony to the intensity of the battle.
Inside the Airborne Museum there's a mini diorama, but this particular one of the mock-up of what the paratroopers would have experienced as they were flying towards St. Mary and Leeds, getting ready to jump. And I cannot imagine the trepidation these fellows were feeling at that particular moment. And the average age was 19. Think about that for a second. Here we see an actual Waco glider, which would have been used with the airborne troops to bring in the heavier supplies and actually some vehicles. You can see the Jeep offloading there. These aircraft were towed behind C-47s. They had no engines. So once they were released, they were on their own. Literally, they glided in the air at night in the dark, fully loaded. They were made of wood frame and canvas sides. Think about that for a minute. You had to navigate all that, land in a dangerous hot LZ, and then fight for your life while you were unloading supplies. Wow. Pretty amazing stuff. And for reference, this is an actual C-47. This is not a replica. This is an actual airplane. This would have been the airplane that would have towed the Waco glider, as well as the airplane that the paratroopers would have been transported from England over to Europe in one of these aircraft and then parachuted out of. Really interesting stuff. As you can tell, there's a lot of other tour groups here. Just ignore the noise in the background.
Presque identique, mais à l'opposé, c'est on préserve ou on détruit. Voilà.
We next moved on to Utah Beach, which was actually the first of the American landing beaches that we visited. 20 some odd thousand troops landed here with only about 500 and something casualties. That is because they landed about 2 or 3 miles off course into a fairly undefended area. And the monument you see here is actually constructed on top of a German bunker by American engineers before the war was over. And the actual beach itself at low tide, which you can see at this point is about 100 yards deep. And you can see now some horses. There are a lot of horses in the area. A lot of horse racing goes on in Normandy, and they were training them and actually walking them through the water to cool them off after running them up and down the beach. The tide comes in very fast here. In about 15 minutes, that water will be up to the green portion, the green algae you just saw there on the beach. And that happened on D-Day as well, which caused some real problems. And there goes a horse. Go get him, Tiger. And they had a little museum there, so they had this diorama fixed up inside. This is completely made up. It's a combination of American equipment and German equipment, as you can see there. But it's a fairly interesting illustration. You can see the beach defenses as well and how they were organized and how they were set up. And then turning to my right, you can see the actual beach out there in the fog now that's moved in heavily, as well as some remaining beach defenses that are for real. This is called a duck. DUKW, made by GMC. It was used to transport men and supplies from boats into the shore. Very handy vehicle. There's still some in service. I think I saw one down in Chattanooga that was doing tours of Chattanooga on the Tennessee River down. This is an actual one. This is a real one. This is not a mock-up here. And I actually had to put my camera way out on the stick to get that shot inside. I just hoped I didn't drop my camera, and so far so good. Looks like we were successful. And just behind me, when I was taking those pictures of the duck, this is an actual mortar position that's built in concrete. They've actually extended the building around it so you can see what it looked like. Now, painted on the rim there on the lip are various images of landscape places as well as the distances to those. So they had the gun, the mortar, already zeroed in on those positions. And about 50 yards, I guess, back from the beach and from the museum that we were just in, is this building, which actually has a bunker built into it. The building itself was there during the battle. It was or actually before the battle, it was a casino, which is kind of a place to go hang out at the beach. And the Germans came and built this bunker underneath it. And then it is now set up as a diorama of American possession and an American command post. Take a look at that. Moving on to Brecourt Manor, this is the monument to the 101st Airborne Troops who assaulted the guns there with Dick Winters. You saw that in the movie. If you didn't see it in the movie, you can go watch it, but it's fairly interesting. It's all private property, so you can't get into it. This is about all we could see there. Moving on down the coast, Omaha Beach. 30 some odd thousand troops landed there, almost 4,000 casualties. In the first wave that went ashore, 90% casualties, over 3/4 of which were KIA. It was a bloodbath for the Americans, for sure. Very peaceful spot now, though. It was a beach town, a resort town before the battle, and has now returned to that. You can see the reason for the extreme casualties. The Americans were trying to move up this draw or this gap in the bluff, and they had them caught in a severe crossfire. It was horrible. Most of the troops that landed that day were actually National Guard troops, and this is the National Guard monument. And you can see the names, it just kind of speaks for itself. And just for background, this monument is actually constructed on top of a massive German bunker, which I didn't really get a good shot of, but it's really interesting stuff. Looking back down toward the beach now from that monument, from the bunker area, the seawall area, you can see now the tide is beginning to come in and how fast it's beginning to come in. This is the beach that lots of men died on. Lots of men died on here trying to get to that seawall that you see there. That is the original seawall. And this is only one section of Omaha Beach. This is the western end. In just a minute, we're going to travel down to the eastern portion, and you'll see even more monuments and more dramatic landscape and stuff. Now we moved on down to the eastern end of Omaha Beach. You can see the same seawall, and that the tide has come in fully, and you can see how narrow the beach is, and that happened.
Engineers were required. But these combat engineers had to be protected by tanks.
We were right there. We were right there.
These trees that you see lining the reflecting pond are cut off at the top as a tribute to the many lives cut short in the invasion.
So it told everybody around there was actually the best place to land. And they were 24,000, but against only 400 soldiers. There's a huge imbalance right there. And yet let me tell you that out of the 400s, most of them were not even from China.
American cemetery in Normandy, 9,300 and some odd Americans are buried here of the 40,000 that were killed in Normandy. So roughly 20%. The rest have been returned home to their families. It was the family's option, of course. I wanted to take a minute and talk about what this means to me. It's kind of hard when you see the brothers buried side by side. When you see a father and a son buried side by side, because they sacrificed, they made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. It's an amazing experience. Just an amazing experience. The headstones just go on for days and days and days. We got some American. It's tough. It's tough to be here. It's tough to watch this. It's tough to understand what we're doing to our country that these men gave the ultimate sacrifice to preserve. How we got from here to where we are today, I just do not understand. But we're here, and it's our job to pass this on to future generations so that they never forget what these men did. God bless them all.
Remember something, what they were about to see, some 80 years ago, because we have another cemetery, and it does
And part of the static display was this Horsa glider here, which is British made and obviously was occupied by British troops that landed at the bridge at night in the dark. And the first glider landed literally 25 yards from the bridge, and then two others right behind it. Amazing feat. This is a replica because these gliders were made of wood frame with canvas skin, just like the other glider that we saw. And the winters following the battles were extremely cold, so the population actually seized the abandoned gliders and cut them up for firewood. So, but this is a replica of what they would have looked like.
Gift shop. 6:30.
I